Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. I'm so excited to be talking to VT Bidania, who is the author, among other books, of A Year Without Home. A lot of you may know her from her Astrid and Apollo series and another soon to come out. And this is a very different book. It's really wonderful. It's a novel in verse, a middle grade book. And we're going to be talking to her about that. If you haven't entered this week's giveaway, make sure to do that when we're done. It ends tonight, midnight Eastern, and you could win a copy of this wonderful book. So don't miss out on that. And sorry, just checking on getting her on here soon. There we are. Her new middle grade novel in verse, based on her own family's story of escaping from Laos during the Vietnam War. Hello, how are you?
Hey, I'm here. Good, how are you?
Good, and you got on perfectly. This is great.
Yay.
Yes. Well, welcome. I was just giving a little intro to your book, but why don't you introduce yourself for people that don't know you, although I'm sure a lot of people do, and tell us how you got started as an author.
Okay. It's kind of a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. I'm VT Bidania. I write the Astrid and Apollo series and A Year Without Home, but you can call me Vong. That's my first name. It's V-O-N-G. Let me see. When I got my MFA in creative writing for children years and years ago, I won't say when it was, but it was like over 100 years ago, right away I tried to submit my work for representation, and all of my stories had Hmong characters. And everywhere I went, whether it was trying to find an agent or editor, everyone told me the same thing, which was that there's no place in the market for stories about Hmong people, and nobody will ever read Hmong stories, and we can't publish your work. It's just not the market will not work with Hmong stories. So because I kept hearing that over and over again, I kept getting rejected over and over again. I just got really, really discouraged. And after a while, I just gave up and I just stopped submitting my work. And that was kind of my first attempt at trying to get published. And this was, like I said, this was a really long time ago. This was before the We Need Diverse Books movement. So it was that long ago. And maybe people just weren't ready for stories with diverse characters. But I grew up in Minnesota and in the Midwest, and I moved to New York City, and that's where I was when I went to grad school, and that's where I was when I was trying to get published. Eventually, I just stopped trying to submit my work, and a few years ago, I moved my family back to Minnesota. I got in the East Coast. I met my husband, we got married, we had kids, and then we moved back to Minnesota. And this was a long time after I had gone to graduate school. So then I was working in the schools part-time just for fun, and I was around a lot of Hmong kids, Hmong students, and around a lot of books and kids' books. And then I just started getting inspired again. So I thought I would try and get published again. And I submitted a chapter book idea to a local publisher, Capstone. They're Minnesota based, and I figured, well, it's been a while, and maybe Capstone is based in Minnesota, so maybe they're more familiar with Hmong people, because I know that a lot of cities and states outside of this area, outside of places that don't have a large Hmong population, might not be familiar with Hmong people. So I thought maybe Capstone would, and they were interested in my idea. And it was an idea to write Hmong folk tales, actually, and we kind of went back and forth on it, and it took a while. But while I was working with an editor about this, I pitched a chapter book idea, and I said, I am also working on a story about a Hmong brother and sister. This is just realistic fiction, and it would just be like a slice of life adventures, their daily adventures. And they were interested in seeing it, and they ended up publishing it, and that became Astrid and Apollo. So that's how I ended up getting published many, many, many years after getting my MFA. I started working on the Astrid and Apollo series. But even though I was writing chapter books, which I really love, my heart was always in middle grade. So I was reading a lot of middle grade books, and this was when I got the idea for A Year Without Home, this middle grade novel. It was about more than 5 years ago, I think. I got the idea to write that. As I was working on Astrid and Apollo, I thought about that, and I was just kind of playing around with the idea of writing a verse novel, and I started working on it. And then, do you want me to talk about how that got published, or
Sure.
that's kind of my journey into publishing?
Yeah, well, I just want to say first, we should make sure people know that I'm glad you mentioned the Astrid and Apollo series, because even though, we're going to be focusing on A Year Without a Home, but we need to acknowledge the fact that Astrid and Apollo is the first children's book series to feature Hmong kids. I mean, to have them as the protagonists. So that I just want to make sure we recognize that. And as you say, there was a lot of resistance to having books like that. So that's a real accomplishment.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. There are 18 books in the series right now, and I'll just show, I have one of them here. This is Astrid and Apollo and the Happy New Year. So Astrid and Apollo Lee are just 8-year-old Hmong American twins. They live in Minnesota. They just, like I said, they have slice of life adventures in the series. They just go to school. They spend time with their family, and friends. They go camping and fishing and do Minnesotan things. And yeah, it's just a happy representation. The reason why I wanted to write Astrid and Apollo was, of course, for the Hmong representation, but I also wanted them to be happy stories about joy, because for so long, Hmong people weren't really included in media in the Asian American experience, and the few times that we did show up, it was almost always just this portrayal of the sad, struggling refugee facing hardships and difficulties and challenges, and not having a hard time during the war, in the camp, and resettling in the US. And that was kind of the only stories that we ever saw about Hmong people. And I really wanted to make sure that what I was writing would be a different story. And like I said, Hmong stories, happy stories about joy, because I always say if Hmong kids got to see these happy stories starring white kids and kids of other backgrounds, then they deserve to see themselves in happy stories too, and as the heroes of their own stories. So that was why I really wanted to write Astrid and Apollo. And Astrid and Apollo just, they have just fun adventures. Like they go to school and, like I said, they have fun with their family. They go camping and fishing. Sometimes they do have high stakes. Like I always joke about this, like they have to figure out, how they're going to get their giant geography project to school, or what to, write their book report on, so those are like as high as stakes they have. But I really just wanted to show them in happy stories. And so that's why I wrote Astrid and Apollo. And I'm really happy that it's been really well received in the schools. It's a really popular series with the kids and the teachers and the librarians. And not every reader, they're popular with readers of all backgrounds, not only Hmong readers. So, and that's kind of what I was aiming for as well. I wanted to normalize this Hmong representation. So that's been really fun. I do have a spin-off of Astrid and Apollo that just came out. It's called Extraordinary Eliana. I have one of the books that just came out. This is their little sister. You can see Astrid and Apollo here. This is their little sister, Eliana. She was always a popular character, especially with the younger kids, the ones in kindergarten. They always asked me when I did school visits, "Are you ever going to write about her?" And so I did, and now she has her own series. So 4 new books in the Extraordinary Eliana series just came out in January this month, and 4 more will be coming out next year. I'm excited to announce. So yeah, so I'm really proud of these books. They've been doing really well with the schools, and a lot of kids are just really happy to read happy stories. Like I mentioned, I had the idea for this A Year Without Home many years ago. So it just came out last week, but it's been a really long time. I've been working on this book for a really long time. And
was it hard to switch gears and write a book like that? Because as you mentioned, Astrid and Apollo stories and probably Extraordinary Eliana, that they're more happy stories. I mean, they may have some challenges, but not exactly on the same level. And here you're switching. It's middle grade. It's a novel in verse. It's a much heavier subject. Was it hard to kind of switch to writing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say necessarily hard to make that switch, but it was definitely very, very different, a different experience. First of all, I had to make the voice a little older because this was a middle grade protagonist, and so she was 11, and usually I'm used to writing short sentences, short chapters for the chapter books for Astrid and Apollo. They're 8 years old, and Eliana is 6. So I really had to switch my voice to be a little bit older, a little bit more mature. The sentences could be longer. I didn't have to worry so much about focusing on the word count, and I could be more descriptive, and especially because it's a verse novel, then I could definitely want, could add more details and everything. So the voice, the format, the structure, a verse novel, it's free verse, but it's still different from a chapter book. So those were the technical things I had to do differently. It's historical fiction, so I did have to do a lot of research, and that in and of itself was also really difficult. It's hard to do research on this time period, this time in history. I talk a lot about the war in the book because that's when it takes place, and the war that was happening in Laos was called the Secret War. This was going on during the Vietnam War, but what was happening specifically in Laos was called the Secret War. It was a war being run by the CIA. So it's really hard to find anything about that. I mean, I looked online, I tried to find books. There are some books that were written by journalists and people in the military who were, around that time, during that time. So they did write books. Some of them were kind of boring. So it was really hard to read those. Whatever news articles or anything, websites, anything like that I found online, some of them were very vague or just too general. And I also watched some videos and documentaries. They were really helpful. But the best, I think that for me, the best resource for finding information about that time were just the people who lived through that era. So I did talk to family members, my parents, my siblings, relatives, and yeah, that was kind of how I did my research. So it was definitely a different experience, but that made it all a bit harder. And also, I guess the biggest thing that is different from this book and writing the Astrid and Apollo series is that this is really personal. It's right. It's sort of autobiographical because it's about my family. I'm not the main character, but still, it was a really personal story that made it really emotional. Whereas the Astrid and Apollo books are just more fun.
Right. Yeah, I imagine. And did that come into your decision to do it as a novel in verse, or why did you choose to do that instead of just a regular prose novel?
I actually thought of writing a novel in verse before I thought about writing my family story. I had been reading a lot of verse novels, middle grade verse novels, and I just fell in love with them. They were so beautiful, and they just were so powerful. And I found them, they really resonated with me. The ones that come to mind especially are Unsettled by Reem Faruqi, Love, Love by Victoria Chang, Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. And also I have to give a shout out to Call Me Athena, Girl from Detroit by Colby Cedar Smith. That's also sort of like a memoir. It's about her grandmother, and that's also a novel in verse. I actually read that when I had already started writing this book, but just to give you an example of the kinds of books that I was reading that were so compelling and just really, really inspired me to try to write a verse novel. Even though I'm not a poet, I don't write poetry, I've never studied poetry, but I read books like that, and I just felt like I want to try to write a verse novel too that might inspire people the way that these inspired me, and just pack that emotional punch that the same feelings that I was getting when I was reading these books. I was like, I think I want to write a book like that too. So I thought of the idea to try and write a novel in verse first before I thought about what it could be, what it would be about. And as I was thinking about this, I started thinking, what if I wrote about my family's escape from Laos, about the losing home and how sad that is. That's how that kind of evolved. I didn't plan to write about my family. I should try not to write anything too autobiographical. My family is really private. I'm a shy person, so I don't like to draw attention to myself. But I thought this might be an interesting story to write in verse.
Oh, well, that makes me wonder, when you were interviewing your family members and you decided to do that, as you say, if your family is very private, was there any resistance to, maybe you shouldn't write about this, or maybe you should fictionalize it a little more and not have it so much about us? Was that kind of hard to convince people?
I guess they were okay with it because, for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, they knew some of it is fiction.
Right, because like you said, some it's fiction, but it is, you include some family pictures in here. They're just
right.
Oh, sorry.
Right. Yes. So I think overall people were probably okay with it because it was a book for kids, and some of it is fiction, and this is a little hard to talk about, but it was sort of to honor my father. So I think they were okay with it. Halfway through working on the book, my father passed away. So that made it really difficult, but maybe that my family was okay with it because this book is kind of like to honor his legacy.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, I mean, I think I read the book, or I'm reading the book a little differently than a kid would read it, because I'm reading it like as a parent. I'm imagining being the mom, and trying to handle this kind of situation, keeping the children safe and all of that. I mean, it is just extraordinary. But as you mentioned, it's told through the eyes of an 11-year-old girl. So talk to us about, uh, can you pronounce her? Is it Guaosheng? How do you
Yeah,
pronounce her
Gao
name?
Sheng. Uh-huh.
Guaosheng. What went into your decision to pick her as the main character, and also just about this idea of her being the oldest daughter. So it's not just that she's the kid escaping, but it's very particular in the fact that she's the oldest daughter of this family.
Well, because I knew I wanted it to be a middle grade novel. Usually middle grade protagonists are around 11, 12, and she was around that age at the time. So she just fit that age and that I guess that voice and that mindset perfectly. And plus, out of all the kids, because she was the oldest, she remembers the most out of what was going on than the rest of us. I mean, like, I don't remember anything. So it made sense that it would be from her perspective because she could tell me more about what was happening. Yes, there are other adults in the family that I could have interviewed and everything, but I really wanted it to be from the eyes of an 11-year-old. And so she just fit that perfectly and she remembered more. That's how she ended up being the main character.
And also, the fact that this is a very patriarchal culture, and so that comes through in the book, where she has
Mm-hmm.
these moments where she's really kind of frustrated with the fact that she has a lot of things that she has to do as the oldest girl, where her brother gets a lot more, freedom. Like even the section when they're in the refugee camp and he can go off and play, where she always has to help watch the children. What do you want kids to take away from this, kind of maybe about her complicated feelings towards her own culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, a couple of things. One thing is, I just want to say that there is no such thing as a perfect culture. And
Mm-hmm.
within every culture, there are going to be flaws and imperfections and things that you might not agree with or that you might not like or support. But it's okay. I think you can just take what you like and agree with, and you can still be proud of your culture and where you come from. I know of people who are really resentful or have like harbor this self-hatred because they don't like certain aspects of their culture. But the way I see it is, you can, like I said, there's no such thing as the perfect culture. And so the things that you don't like, you don't have to agree with. I mean, you can still be respectful. Um, I'm not saying you should rebel and, tell your parents that you hate your culture if you disagree with certain parts, but you can still just, you can still be respectful and be proud of the parts that you like. And as you grow up and become more independent, you don't have to follow those things or agree with them. And eventually, as an adult, you will be able to have your independence, and you will be fine. So just remember that. And also, sometimes when you're in that under those circumstances where there are these cultural expectations placed on you, and it seems impossible to deal with them, just know that you can get through it. You can find the strength within yourself to do it. I know that sounds really hard, especially for a kid who might be going through that, but you can get through it. She did, I did. It's okay. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think
Yeah.
that's what I want people to think, to remember, especially young people, that even if you have complicated feelings about your background and the traditions and the expectations that are placed on you, you don't have to embrace those, but you can still like where you come from, and still respect it. You don't have to agree with those things.
I love that, because I think that is something a lot of kids struggle with. Like you said, there's no such thing as a perfect culture, so there's always going to be something that maybe you disagree with. And speaking about getting through things that are really difficult, of course, this is all about a girl who that they're escaping. Goes through some really traumatic events and has huge changes in her life. And one image that you have in the book that I thought was so beautiful was the seeds from the peach tree. I mean, because first of all, like the hills and the forest. I mean, it sounds like where they left was so beautiful. And one thing she carries with her that she doesn't even tell anybody about is these seeds from the peach tree. How did you choose that image, and what did you want it to kind of represent?
Okay, well, sorry, this is a little hard to talk about too.
Mm.
Um, well, growing up, my dad always talked about peaches
Mm.
and peach trees, and I never really thought much of it. It wasn't until I started writing this book and talking to my sister more and doing more research about our house that I realized that we had these beautiful peach trees in our outside our house. And also, I think my dad's childhood home, he also had fruit trees. I don't know, I can't remember if they were peach trees or something else, but they were also fruit trees. So I think he really loved peach trees and fruit trees because it was just, it meant something to him. It meant so much to him, like probably meant home to him. And when my sister talks about our house on the hill in the book, she also talks about the peach trees. So to me, the peach trees represent home and
Mm.
house and love and family and Laos. And that's why I wanted them to be in there. So that's what they're a symbol of that. And I'm sorry, you asked something else besides the
Well,
what it
just
represents.
yeah, just or how you chose that image and what it represented. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to kind of like pay tribute to those peach trees.
Mm.
And like I said, they represent home. Whenever anyone in my family talks about our house on the hill, they do mention those trees. Even my auntie, she'll say, "Oh yes, you guys had a big peach tree." One of my
Mm.
cousins, he mentioned it too. He said, "You guys had peach trees." That's what people remember. So
Right.
yeah.
And I love that it's such like a very vivid image of the house and the home and what she's trying to carry with her, which kind of encapsulates this whole idea about being a refugee. And it strikes me that even though this book is about something that happened, in some ways like a long time ago, thinking about kids that are reading it today, as well before they were born, it still seems so relevant today because of, as you mentioned in your book and your author's note, there's still so many wars going on, so many people that have to leave their homes that don't want to. Why is a book like this still so important for kids to read today?
I mean, there's so many reasons. Even now as we speak, right outside my window, there's sort of wars happening right now.
Mm.
There are so many families and kids especially that are being displaced right now because of these wars and conflicts happening all over the world, even nationally, even locally. And I hope that, first of all, I hope that the book can serve as a mirror for kids who've been through this, who've lost their homes and been separated from families or lost loved ones and their countries because of war. I hope the book can be a mirror for them, for the kids who've never experienced that and who don't understand those kinds of losses. I hope that the book can serve as a window for them and maybe help to open their eyes and their hearts and their minds and maybe build some empathy.
Mm.
I honestly have kind of lost all hope for adults, but maybe young people can read this book and after reading it, maybe they can understand and see that this kind of experience, even though it happened a long time ago, is still happening right now in real time to their peers. And like I said, hopefully build some empathy and understanding and maybe bring about some change, even if it's small.
Yeah, something we desperately need right now, as we were chatting a little bit ahead of time, the kind of current events. We definitely need to raise kids who have more empathy, especially towards people who are being displaced. Um, Maybe to end on a little bit of a lighter note, maybe. Do you want to talk to us about your other projects that you have coming up? Of course, we've been talking about this amazing book, but do you want to go ahead and give us a preview of other things you might be working on?
Sure, I'm working on several things right now. I'm working on so many things. Like I said, I'm working on the next Eliana books that will be coming out next year, and those are really fun and lighthearted. Um, they'll be, playing in the snow, things
Um,
like that. Making a new best friend. So working on the Eliana books, they're short, but they do take a lot of time. I'm finishing up a middle grade novel I've been telling people about. It includes two of my favorite things. Food and Keanu Reeves. It was inspired by an Instagram notification I got on my phone one day a few years back that said something like Keanu Reeves 456 is now following you. And I knew it was fake, but I was still very excited. So that just sparked this idea. And I started thinking, what if I wrote a book about a middle grade novel about a girl who's 12 and she has a YouTube channel with her mom and they cook food. And then one day she gets this mysterious email and then it sends her on this quest to search for her long lost dad who kind of looks like Keanu Reeves. So that's, that's something that I'm finishing up. I've been working on picture books. I have, ideas for a graphic novel. Oh, I also want to write a young adult romantasy. And last of all, these are just, like I just said, there's so many ideas. Whenever I talk to my agent, she's like, you have to pick just one. But this is not, I got this idea to write sort of dystopian novel just the other day, coincidentally, just about sad things happening to the earth and trying to kids having to save the world by battling these evil forces that have taken over and are bullying everyone. So that too. So yes, it's a lot of different projects, different age ranges, and different subject matter. But that's kind of what I have to work on for the next couple of years.
I love it. You're so creative. I mean, like you said, that you have all these different age ranges, different subjects, different genres that you're doing. I'm so excited to see what you do next because I love your books so far. So I can't wait to see what you're doing. And for those of you watching, when they come out, we of course will share about them in our stories, and so you can know about them as well. And if you haven't entered this week's giveaway, one more plug. It ends today, Thursday, midnight Eastern time. Don't miss out. It's a really great book that you're going to want to share with your kids. So be sure to enter that. And Bong, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so fun to get to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was nice.
Yes, and for everybody watching, this will be up in just a few minutes on Instagram if you joined us late. And of course, always on our YouTube channel, so you can also watch it if you prefer to watch there. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Vong. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.